July is Client Appreciation Month at Sport Clips Haircuts. Get a double MVP for the price of an MVP, or cool it down and try the MVP on ice. It's our way of saying thanks for all you do. Hurry, ends July 31st. Sport Clips. It's good to be a guy.
This is the Best of Mike and Mike podcast on ESPNRadio.com. The Best of Mike and Mike.
Hey, it's Golic. Thanks for checking out the Best of Mike and Mike podcast. Here's what we've got for you from Thursday. NBA free agency dominates the headlines. We discussed the latest with Jeff Van Gundy. Plus, you'll want to hear about Jeff's connection with U.S. women's national team. And some interesting baseball talk today with Buster Olney, the Nasty Boy Rob Dibble, and the Tigers' David Price.
The Best of Mike and Mike.
Good morning, Mike and Mike. Presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guests on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline. Thanks for starting your day with us on this Thursday. The thrill of victory and the agony of defeat. Not sure we've seen much agony quite like what happened to the English women last night. We'll get to that. We're going to get to the bottom of the unwritten rules of baseball, or at least one of them, starting in this hour. My favorite manager uses magic to end a losing streak, literally, and further evidence that one NFL team is ready to move to Los Angeles, all that and more. But we'll start, obviously, with the free agent spending frenzy, big fella.
We always talk about, I know growing up, and you said this about my boys, that I did them a disservice making them, but steering them toward football when I should have steered them toward baseball.
Yeah.
We were all wrong. Dribble a basketball.
Yeah.
If you can somewhat dribble a basketball and have it not go off your foot, you are now making $10 million a year. It's stunning. And you know what? Hey, I'm not saying in a bad way. More power to them. But the money going out since free agency started all of a day ago.
Yeah.
We've gone through $1.4 billion already of guys you're seeing making money that you're saying, wait a minute, I've seen that guy play. He's making $10 million a year. I'll continue to say more power to him, but boy, oh boy, the money is going out. And guess what? As we've talked about the next couple of years, how the cap is going to continue to rise, we ain't seen nothing yet.
There are colossal contracts going out, and you're right, in some places, money you didn't. I mean, Kyle Singler is getting paid $25 million. Amir Johnson is getting paid $24 million. Huge money going out there, but of course, the biggest of the headlines yesterday is Kevin Love going back to Cleveland, cementing, I think, what most people have thought. We had the number yesterday. They're 1-2 to make it out of the Eastern Conference next year are the Cavaliers, which is, I'm sure it's happened before, but I can't think of the last time a team was that prohibitive of a favorite to win a conference. And I guess had Kevin Love chosen to leave, maybe that would have tilted a little bit in the other direction. Yeah. But look, give LeBron James credit. Not that this wouldn't have happened otherwise. But LeBron James did what he needed to do by opting out and just sitting on the side and waiting and applying just the requisite amount of pressure. Now, if there's one thing that Dan Gilbert has proven in the past, whatever it is he's done right or wrong, he's never afraid to spend money.
Right.
He'll spend money, and he's spending it now, and he had to spend it to keep Kevin Love. The real question was, would Love take the short-term deal or would he take the long-term deal, which creates a couple of different possibilities. Now, he's there. He's got the security and all the rest of that. It does also leave open the possibility, though, we talked about this earlier this week, that if for whatever reason down the road the marriage of LeBron James, Kyrie Irving, and Kevin Love doesn't seem to be working, he's an asset, and he loses the ability to dictate where he winds up going if they ultimately decide to trade him. That's the one thing Kevin Love really risks.
Yeah, but he went for that security. We talked about it. We both thought he would go for the shorter-term deal and you know, do what's being called the Joe Flacco, bet on himself, and when the cap gets a little bigger to make a little bit more money. But, you know, who knows? Everybody, as we've always talked about, everybody has a different reason for doing things, and I can't blame anybody for taking long-term deals and security, even knowing what we know about the cap. And those deals could be, in a couple of years, tens of $millions more if they would have waited. But I would never blame anybody for taking $110 million over 5 years and grabbing that security. And you're right about Cleveland. And we may differ a little bit. I don't really know if LeBron opting out put pressure on the Cavs. If the Cavs couldn't figure out they needed to do this, they should be not thrown out of the NBA. You have LeBron James for another few years, certainly in his prime, maybe more. This is your time to make hay. If you weren't re-signing people and trying to keep this team together, then I don't know what you're doing. You're never going to have a better opportunity to get an NBA championship, and they gave him on Shumpert the $10 million a year, 4 for $40. Tristan Thompson, the name isn't on the sheet we have of basically deals, and I don't say done because you can't sign till July 9th, but they're just about done with that 5-year, $80 to $85 million deal. So you're getting Love back, you're getting Shumpert back, you're getting Tristan Thompson back. Oh, by the way, Varejao is coming back from the injury, so you get him back on the court. I mean, this team is going to come back, to use your line, back and better than ever. I mean, they're just ready to go.
And they're spending the money. I mean, I agree with what you're saying. Of course, they knew they'd bring these guys back to win a championship, but you got to have an owner who's willing to spend the money. That's a lot.
Right.
Listen to all the names you just listed.
Yeah.
These guys are all getting paid a lot of money.
Yep, they are.
Now, these teams are making a lot of money. The value of the franchise, which dropped $100 million when LeBron left the first time, whatever the word is, goes back up again. So all of that is, yes, they're good. It's going to be good, and it makes sense for everybody to do it. And listen, at the end of the day, you can bet on yourself all you want. If someone hands you a pen and says, sign this piece of paper, and you get $110 million, it's going to be very difficult to put that pen down.
You're not kidding?
I don't care who you are. I don't care how much faith you have in yourself. You hand me a pen and say, sign this, and here's $110 million, that's going to be very tough not to do.
With what's going on right now, I would have in the NBA, I would have a pen taped to my hand and just wait for somebody to put the piece of paper down in front of me so I could sign. And this was after a poolside meeting with LeBron as well, with Kevin Love. They had their, everybody having their discussions, and we'll get into meetings and how sometimes they can go good and sometimes they can go bad. But Kevin Love felt he did his due diligence in talking to the people he needed to talk to, including, i.e., LeBron James, to realize that this was the place he wanted to be and this was the money he was going to make.
Yes, among the things he wrote on the Players Tribune website, at the end of the day, after meeting with my teammates, it turns out pools are great meeting places. Mm-hmm. And with the front office, it was clear Cleveland was the place for me. Here is Kevin Love.
This was a decision that took a lot of thought, but at the same time, every time I drew it up or did the pros and cons of different situations, Cleveland was always the situation that I wanted to be in, because I do want to win and have a chance to win championships while also having some success of my own.
That's Love on the Players Tribune on Sirius XM.
Yeah, I mean, I understand what he's saying. This is always the thought of guys like Kevin Love. You're a star somewhere in Minnesota, but you're not going anywhere. You're the third wheel and then an injured one on a team that's going to be in the hunt for the NBA title for a few years to come. Do you want that? Is that what you want? I've talked about this for years on this show. What's a player's motivation? Is it geography? Is it family? Is it money? Is it status? What is it? And with Kevin Love, he pretty much explained his chance to win a championship here. He knows the pecking order. He knows where it is right now. What does anything change? I have no idea, and you're correct to say down the road, does he become an asset to the Cavs to do with what they need if it turns out it's not working? But it all comes down to the players' understanding and the player's decision, and he would have had choices about where he wanted to go and just where they are in their life and what they want. And one of the things he's getting right now is a really big paycheck.
He is, but listen, if you just start thinking about it too, because start thinking what they need, because they have too many big guys.
Yeah.
So someone's getting traded. It isn't going to be Kevin Love. But between Anderson Varejao, Timothy Mozgov, and Tristan Thompson plus Love, there aren't enough minutes in the world to go around for all those guys to play. Now, you can say Varejao got hurt last year.
Right.
Love got hurt last year. So how nice was it to have that depth?
Mm-hmm.
But going into the season, if you need something else, I don't know what's going to wind up happening with everybody else. If you need something else, namely a backup plan in case the oft-injured Kyrie Irving gets hurt, then maybe one of those guys, and I'm thinking Varejao, becomes a trade chip to try and get yourself someone like that. One way or another, I mean, the Cavaliers are right now. Well, let's put it this way. If LaMarcus Aldridge winds up in San Antonio, which it strongly feels like is going to happen, who's the favorite right now? If I gave you you could bet on a team real money to win the NBA championship next year, I assume it would either be Cleveland or San Antonio, or maybe Golden State.
Yeah, I mean, I think you still have to have Golden State in the discussion. There's part of me that would lean towards San Antonio.
I would lean towards Cleveland.
I guess maybe in the East, because of the East, because San Antonio, you would think if it plays out, but you never know about seedings, would match up at some point with Golden State. We would see what that would happen. But, you also talked about what if Miami gets everybody back together again. And again, this is all based on saying people are going to be healthy, because as you saw with Chris Bosh going down and then the injuries with Kyrie and Love and the injuries they've had in Chicago. Let's not forget about them. They get Dunleavy back, who was talking about how LeBron would have loved that Dunleavy in Cleveland. Well, he's still going to be shooting daggers against Cleveland next year, re-signing with the Bulls, and Jimmy Butler re-signs with the Bulls. I think it's a pretty good grouping of three with Cleveland and Chicago and Miami. We haven't even mentioned, Washington or Atlanta at this point.
I would say, while I like what Miami is putting together, if everyone is healthy, I don't think any of them even sniff Cleveland in the playoffs next year. Not even sniff. But we'll see. And by the way, why people should play basketball and not football. Yesterday, 10 NBA players agreed to contracts with at least $61 million guaranteed dollars in them. 10 yesterday. Colin Kaepernick's contract set an NFL record with $61 million guaranteed dollars.
Yeah.
So there were 10 players yesterday in the NBA who signed contracts with as many guaranteed dollars in them as the biggest guaranteed contract in the NFL. Again, Kaepernick's contract is by no means the biggest contract, but it has the most guaranteed money. So, again, here's a pen, sign this, and you're guaranteed this amount of money. 10 guys yesterday got what Colin Kaepernick got.
The biggest difference in with like NBA and baseball is you see that deal, and that's the deal. In football, it's X amount of years, X amount of money, but you got to go to that third line, that third column of X amount of money of that guaranteed. In the NBA, what you read about these guys, that's what they're getting. That's what they are getting.
Listen, mamas, don't let your babies grow up to play football. Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance. More independent agents sell Progressive Insurance than any other brand. Find an agent at Progressive.com. Now, that's Progressive. Now, of course, Love signing is the most interesting thing of the many moves yesterday. And then, and there are tons of them, just tons and tons and tons, and we'll run through them as we go. But the one guy who hasn't signed, and now maybe two, I think are equally interesting, which is to say the world is turning its back on the glossiest, glitziest, flashiest franchise in American professional sports, right? The big franchises are the Yankees, the Cowboys, and the Lakers. Right? Those are sort of the three franchises, and the world is turning, the basketball world is turning its collective back on the Lakers. And LaMarcus Aldridge, and from what I'm reading out of L.A. now, DeAndre Jordan as well, are the latest to say to the Lakers, you know what? You're selling me Hollywood. I don't care.
Sell me basketball.
These guys want to win. And the Lakers are not selling that. That is the overwhelmingly clear message. Once again, they started this Twitter campaign. I read a story on Deadspin that they started a Twitter campaign, L.A. to L.A., and they've got Adam Levine. You know, we talked about this the other day about what celebrity could show up at dinner with you. And you know what? If you wanted to sign my daughter is 14 years old.
Right.
She loves Maroon 5.
Right.
You want to sign my daughter to a contract?
Do that.
Bring Adam Levine.
Yeah.
She'll be very impressed. You want to sign LaMarcus Aldridge to a contract? Show him how you're going to win. Show up like Houston apparently did with graphs and charts, and these are the statistics, and these are the numbers, and this is why instead of Kobe walking in there and saying, yeah, you'll be my Pau Gasol.
Yeah.
LaMarcus Aldridge like, how quickly can I get the heck out of here? I don't care if Jack Nicholson is sitting courtside. I want to win championships. And the Lakers, in my lifetime, have never felt farther away from that than they do right now.
Listen, when they were doing it with Dwight Howard, they put up all the billboards and went that route. Now, players can be different. There may be some players that would like the glam and the glitz of what to do. But you know what a team's job is to know? Which that player wants. Remember I talked about when we were having our fun with just what you said, who do you want at dinner? Part of that was me saying, oh, that team knew who I liked. Well, part of that team's responsibility is to kind of get a feel or know what that player is after. You know, LaMarcus Aldridge is talking about, basketball. You got to find a feel for that instead of selling all the ancillary things, which it seemed was going on, all the amenities out there of L.A. except for what was going on in the court. Maybe you know why? Maybe they didn't have a whole lot to sell on the court.
So let me, in fact, respond to that by citing our friend Mr. Popovich. I think if there is an NBA genuinely, I won't even put it this way because I don't think you can be. If there's an NBA player who wants to play for my team because of what city I'm located in, maybe I don't want that player.
Yeah.
You know what?
Distraction.
I want a guy whose primary motivation is to win, to be a part of a championship team, to be something special as a basketball player rather than to have the Hollywood opportunities or the Madison Avenue opportunities that come with these glamour franchises on each coast who can't convince anybody to sign with them. Greg Monroe winds up becoming the most important player in the NBA to these two franchises, and it sets up a fascinating battle between Phil Jackson and Jeannie Buss on opposite coasts.
Yeah.
Because Greg Monroe has now become the Lakers' last-ditch effort. They couldn't get LaMarcus Aldridge. They couldn't get DeAndre Jordan. So now they're going to go after Greg Monroe. The Knicks, if they don't get Greg Monroe, are going to wind up with holding the bag with absolutely nothing. And be completely humiliated. So the battle to end all battles now winds up being over a guy who isn't even that great of a player. I mean, he's a fine player, but I don't think anyone is saying, well, you signed Greg Monroe, and obviously you make yourself a championship contender.
He's a nice player.
He's not Kevin Durant.
I'm with you, but
look at the significance now to these two franchises of who gets that guy.
These are the franchises that have had stars, all-time greats, play for their teams, and now they can't get them. Now and we both thought going into this the Lakers would be a team that may be able to get them before the Knicks. When you're just talking about those two teams, that L.A. may have been a destination point for a couple of these stars over the New York Knicks. And now you hear the presentation and you hear, listen, it comes down to leadership, doesn't it? I mean, it flat out comes down to leadership. Because that was never an issue years ago for the L.A. Lakers, was it?
Of course not, because Dr. Jerry was there and they knew what they were doing, and now it feels, from the relative distance at which we speak, that they don't have any idea what they're doing. Look, the bottom line of it is this. The Lakers drafted D'Angelo Russell instead of Jahlil Okafor, the narrative goes, because they were confident they would get a big man in free agency. If they don't get a big man in free agency, they're going to have to tell you, well, we wanted D'Angelo Russell all along, regardless of anything else, because we think he's going to be a great player. And maybe that's true. But the conventional wisdom around the league and what people are going to believe, whether it is actually accurate or not, is that they took Russell because they thought they were going to sign LaMarcus Aldridge or DeAndre Jordan or one of these guys. And if they don't get Greg Monroe, then they didn't get any of them.
Nothing.
And they're going to look real bad.
But you're right. That's exactly what the Knicks and the Lakers are fighting for right now.
For Greg Monroe.
For Greg Monroe.
One of the team that doesn't get him winds up looking
getting nothing.
Ridiculous.
Holding the bag. You're
exactly right. 100% holding the bag.
It's amazing. Your first meeting, and it comes out that you basically blew it. Because you spent too much time talking about other things. I think, Kobe spoke for like 3 minutes?
3 minutes.
That's
and basically said, you could be my pal Gasol.
Yeah, exactly. Don't even think we're on the same level, my friend. You'll be my pal.
Here's in my 20th season.
Oh, boy.
Here's Brian Windhorst on the Lakers.
LaMarcus Aldridge sent a shot across their bow today when he said their presentation to him was not adequate from a basketball standpoint. And that should be a warning sign and a learning statement going forward for the Lakers. Today was bitterly disappointing. Take what you learned and you heard from LaMarcus and what you heard from Dwight Howard and Carmelo Anthony, and for a change, apply it and change going forward.
It's a feisty Brian Windhorst.
Really. And let me quickly say about Kobe. I'm not saying that in a bad. That's Kobe Bryant.
Yeah.
There is in no way am I saying, oh boy, Kobe did a bad job in that meeting. Kobe was himself. I don't think anybody should be surprised. Anybody sitting here saying, well, Kobe's been playing a long time, he's going to learn how to maybe acquiesce. Kobe Bryant plays the way Kobe plays, and I have no problem with that. You just have to know exactly what you're getting with him, and that's his style of play. That's his demeanor. That's his attitude. That shouldn't shock anybody.
I just find it, this is the vision I have, is the Lakers sitting in a room going, well, wait a minute. We have Jack Nicholson sitting there. We have Denzel Washington sitting there. We've got the Knicks going. We've got Spike Lee sitting there. And we've got Howard Stern sitting court. So we've got all these big stars around. And the NBA players are saying, I'm a bigger star than any of them now. Look where we are. Look at the NBA now. These guys are bigger than any of the movie stars that show up at these games. They don't care about that stuff.
Yeah.
Is Kevin Durant not a big enough star for your taste? LeBron James went to Cleveland. He's from Cleveland, but whatever. Right. These guys don't care about that stuff. They want to win. They want to be a part of something. The money's the same everywhere. Being closer to whatever Hollywood producer you think might put you in a movie just doesn't matter to these guys. And the Lakers seem not to have figured that out. They're the last ones who haven't figured that out. And unfortunately for them, they're figuring it out now the hard way, and so are the Knicks. Here's Brian Windhorst on why it seems no one has any interest whatsoever in go to the Knicks.
I think ultimately the Knicks were not set up to be hugely successful here, and there's a good reason why. This is a bad year to have cap space. They're just not set up to be ultimately successful here. And that's why they're not set up to do a fast turnaround, which is why I think that Carmelo Anthony knew all that when he signed last year, that this team was not primed for a fast turnaround. And if you don't have success to sell right now, you don't have to have a heck of a lot. because so many teams have money, and the Knicks don't have that success to sell.
Listen, I agree with that. If you couldn't see the writing on, now maybe 17 wins was a little less than they expected, I'll give you that. But I agree with everything he said. Carmelo knew exactly what he was getting into when he signed for, $156 million or whatever he signed for.
It was $124
million. I mean, he knew what he was getting into, didn't he? He knew what he was signing for. I mean, if
he didn't, then shame on him.
Well, that's exactly right. I completely agree. And now, you said it. These are great franchises that were great franchises. And you know how we are nowadays. What have you done for me lately?
Well, I hate to say this. The Lakers were a great franchise. The Knicks were a great franchise in their own minds only. I mean, the Knicks, we who are fans of the Knicks talk about the 90s like we were a dynasty.
Yeah,
I mean, they made the finals twice.
Right.
Their last championship was 1973.
Yeah.
So this notion
true.
that's a great franchise. 1973 was a very, very long time ago.
I guess for those on the outside looking in, maybe it seemed better than it was.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Look,
yeah.
I mean, they forever they've had this to sell. We play in the mecca of basketball. We play in Madison Square Garden.
Not a sell.
And the NBA stars of today say, so?
Yeah.
And that's the reality of it.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Mike and Mike.
Jeff Van Gundy, longtime NBA coach, of course, and analyst for us at ESPN and ABC, with us on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline. And, Jeff, I read just with absolute fascination this story a couple of weeks ago that was written about you, about how you had, living in your home, two of the stars on the U.S. Women's National Team. And I'd love you to tell the story for those who didn't get a chance to see it, how that came to be and what that experience has been like.
Well, a couple of years back, Brian King, who played for the Houston Dynamo and now runs the Houston Dash, the women's professional soccer league or team in Houston, they have a host family program because the women's soccer players first live like nomads because they play a couple months here, then they go to the national team, etc. He was telling me about it at a fundraiser, and I said I thought that sounded like a great thing. So we took in Megan Klingenberg 2 years ago, so she stayed with us all last summer as she was playing for the Houston Dash, and then she asked us this year if the number one pick in the draft, Morgan Bryan, who is graduating from Virginia and is on the national team, could stay with us as well. So we have those two staying with us this summer before they went to the World Cup and now when they get back. And they're terrific athletes. They're great people. You know, it's been more of a blessing for us than it is for them. I tell you that, because we get to see up close every day greatness and class together. And I always say this. It would be like we had the number one pick in the draft living with us. It would be like Karl Anthony Towns needing a host family to be able to afford to live in Minnesota. You know, and it's just it shows the disparity economically that a lot of these athletes face.
Morgan Bryan, the youngest player on the women's national team right now. So when that's going on, you sitting them down, Jeff, and you going over some house rules with them as they're getting ready to stay with you?
No, but thankfully they do stay with us so I could get my Apple TV up. I am electronically so unsavvy that they have helped in a number of ways. But no house rules. Like, this is the thing. Like, they are so serious about their profession and about their goals, not only for the Dash but the World Cup. Like, they're incredible. Like, if you say, hey, you want to get a burger and fries, they look at you like you just, like, committed a major offense because they eat so healthy. That's why we can't eat with them. They just like, you know, it's salmon and vegetables, and I'm like burgers and fries. So it's real different.
And the other thing from that story that I read that I thought was fascinating was you talked about just the total lack of an ego. I think the quote that I read in the story was you said that whoever the single biggest diva is in women's soccer would be the easiest player to coach you ever had in the NBA.
Well, if the two players that we're dealing with or who live with us, Megan and Morgan, are, you know, if that's how most soccer players are, which I imagine they are, it's just really incredible. There's no sense of entitlement, guys. They expect to work for what they get, and they don't get that much, you know, financially. And their parents, the sacrifices they have made,
to give their daughters this opportunity for their dream. It's incredible, and that's why, it's so gut-wrenching watching these games, because one play can make the difference between winning and losing, and, like the poor English girl yesterday. And so, I'm just so happy for them that they get to pursue this dream, and so proud of them because of how they've played, but also how they conduct themselves. They're just, the epitome of what you'd want your athletes to be.
And it still is just stunning. While it's a great story that you've taken them in, it's stunning to me. This could be about to be women who are on the number one team in the world, yet they have to stay at somebody's house instead of being able to afford a place of their. It just blows my mind.
Everything about the story.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Jeff.
You guys are right, but and these. The two we have, and Carly Lloyd, the other great player, another great player for the Americans, is on the dash team, but she doesn't need a host family. I guess her financial situation may be a little different. But our girls make a lot more than the rest of the team. That also, this is when we're talking about Megan and Morgan. Yeah, we're giving them a place to stay, but it's not like the other girls don't need it because they make far less. So. It's really the disparity economically between the sports is incredible. The soccer gets a huge bump right now, right? Everybody's watching the World Cup. But this is why we have to try to, also cover it when they get back to their league. This is their fourth league they've tried to start. This one's got to stick for these people to have a career.
It's a fascinating story. Yep. It really is in every possible way. Micah, Jeff Van Gundy. All right, let's talk a little hoops with you, Jeff. Kevin Love makes the decision to stay in Cleveland, and they just look loaded. As of right now, they look completely loaded. Do you expect them to come back with Mozgov, Varejao, Thompson, and Love? That's a lot of bigs and on one team, and a lot of money spent in that area. Do you expect them to possibly look to trade a Varejao or something else like that? And what are your thoughts, generally speaking, on Cleveland, which sets up to be about as prohibitive a favorite in a conference as any team I can remember in a really long time?
Well, I do expect them, after hoarding these bigs, and I think it's been smart by Dan Gilbert and David Griffin to do that, because they'll be able to go out and address either before the season or during the season an area of need, because Mozgov is not paid very much. Varejao, because he signed his deal before this big bump in the TV money, they're very reasonable prices. So if they decide that they need another perimeter player, if they need a point behind Kyrie Irving, whatever they need, I think they're going to have the resources to go out and get them. And I think James's committing on a year-by-year basis puts extreme pressure on the team every year to try to assemble a roster that is very capable of winning. And some may question, why does the player have such power? Well, I think he's using his power wisely. I think Cleveland has responded well with the roster that they put around him. And like you said, guys, they have such a great opportunity to reach another finals if they stay healthy.
And then, Jeff, as far as free agency as a whole, in every sport, the day, the minute, actually, that it starts, and every team has their list of guys, just I'm sure as you did, of knowing who you're going to go after and what kind of presentation you're going to give to that player. I'd like your thoughts on what is perceived as the Lakers basically blowing their opportunity with LaMarcus Aldridge based on their presentation. So your thoughts on that and the process of preparing something like that.
Yeah, I'm not so sure I buy the unnamed sources that say they blew it. Listen, there's so much misinformation out there about the draft and about free agency. I think what happens oftentimes is you go in there, and what does the Lakers have to sell right now? They're not going to be a playoff team next year, most likely. They're best player is Kobe Bryant, who's talked openly about retiring at the end of this year. The opportunity to win for LaMarcus Aldridge there isn't what it is at other places. And every player is a little bit different in that everybody wants opportunity, but maybe it's opportunity to win a championship for one player. Maybe it's an opportunity to start or be an all-star. Maybe it's an opportunity in another player to play in a big market. Without knowing what LaMarcus Aldridge is thinking, I don't know exactly what he wants an opportunity to do. I would think at this point it's to win, but then it comes down to money. So if you can win big and make similar money, then I think you would see, I would think LaMarcus Aldridge is going to end up in San Antonio or Houston.
I think San Antonio seems to be what most people are pointing to, but Houston made an impressive presentation, and a lot of people like how prepared they seem to be there. Mike and Jeff Van Gundy. And then there's DeAndre Jordan, who I think is an interesting player. You know, he seems to be, he's a great defender, unbelievable rebounder, and then dunks the ball when they throw him lobs. And it sounds like, if you believe what you hear around him, he wants to be more than that. Like, he doesn't like having that role. And I just wonder, from what you've seen of him, does he look like a player who has the ability to develop more offensive game? If he goes someplace, can he be the number 2 scoring option on a good NBA team?
Well, I think, again, this goes back to opportunity. So if that's what he wants and the money's similar, then he'll go. But I think he'll go back to the Clippers, because I think at the end of the day, every player after this many years in the NBA knows exactly who they are and why they're thriving. And he's thriving because he had great role acceptance, in that when Doc Rivers came in, he committed fully to the defensive end. He can lead the league in rebounding. And then he's an opportunistic offensive player, and playing with a great point guard and another big like Blake Griffin who can really pass opens up his ability to score as much as he does. Now, there's no team that's trying to win a championship that's going to come down and go to Jordan in the low post. But that doesn't mean that you can't be a great player and help a team win a championship if you don't have a refined post game. Like, DeAndre Jordan's a great player. The Clippers lose him, they have no way to replace him. And so if DeAndre Jordan goes back, they're a legitimate championship caliber team. If he moves on, man, it's going to be hard to maintain that level with just Paul and Blake Griffin and a bunch of other good players.
I totally agree, and I think that's the best spot for him. Yep, I find it fascinating that he is looking to expand it in that way. All right, Jeff, enjoy the game on Sunday. I know you'll be watching, like everybody else, the women's national team, and you'll be watching it maybe more closely than most for obvious reasons. And we'll check in with you again soon. Have a great summer.
All right, take care, guys.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Guys, at Sport Clips Haircuts, we appreciate everything you do. So this month, we're giving you double the Sport Clips MVP experience for the price of a single. It's the Sport Clips Instant Replay. After your haircut, go into overtime on our legendary hot towel treatment. Enjoy a double header of our massaging shampoo and soothing scalp treatment. And beat the heat with our new MVP on ice. Our legendary hot towel becomes the refreshing chilled towel at no extra charge. Sport Clips, it's good to be a guy.
Mike and Mike,
we have something we want to get into. Our buddy Buster Olney is with us on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline Baseball Insider. We'll get back to all this basketball coming up shortly. And there's a column that Buster wrote recently that struck both of us, and we wanted to get into it today a little bit, and we will. But before we get to that, first of all, good morning, Robert.
What's up, guys?
How you doing? I was fascinated to read how Joe Madden, who continues to be our favorite manager, decided to address his team's losing streak. Did you see this? He brought a magician in. The Cubs were on a losing streak. They had a very bad weekend against the Cardinals on national TV. Everything was feeling kind of bad. They went to play the Mets. And Buster, he brought a magician into the clubhouse to entertain the guys and try and lighten the mood.
Yeah, and that's Joe Madden essentially giving his players something else to think about every day. I thought about this. We saw the Cubs on Sunday Night Baseball last weekend, And it feels like that Joe Madden, and I really don't mean this in a way to demean the players, but he's kind of like the first and second grade teacher who's trying to keep the attention of the kids, through the 162-game season. And this is how he does it, by every day having something that's different than the day before, by having those themed costumed road trips that he took when he was with the Tampa Bay Rays. It's part of what makes him great, that he sort of refreshes and renews every day.
Yeah. And with that young team and everything else.
Yeah, I think it's cool. I mean, nothing he does should surprise us at all.
Yeah, no, the parade of animals coming into the clubhouse hasn't begun yet, but Chicago will enjoy that. All right, Buster, if you would, set the table for the discussion, and then we have an old friend in our studio who's going to help advance it for us. But set the table for the discussion about the column you wrote recently about one of the quote-unquote unwritten rules in baseball that may need to be erased.
Well, I wrote a column, and it was inspired by what happened with cricket player Philip Hughes, that there was a crazy bounce the ball, and tragically he was killed. And so I wrote a column about the unwritten rules about, retaliation and throwing inside, and if you hit our guy, then we're gonna hit your guy, or we're gonna hit three of your guys, or we're gonna pitch inside, and how outdated that is, and how that needs to change, because the idea, especially within a really strong union, of one player throwing at another person to render justice seems really stupid. And you look back on it now 2 years ago, that night when Ryan Dempster threw at Alex Rodriguez 3 different times seems really stupid, and that needs to change. And there needs to be a more grown-up way for these issues to be dealt with.
Is it a situation that you think needs to change from baseball side, or the players have to stop doing it?
Well, Golic, you'll know this better than I do. I don't think the players are going to change. I think the rules have to change. And we saw that in the NFL where, the thought process was, well, you know what, you can't change the NFL by altering the rules in which the defensive backs can hit the wide receivers. Well, you know what? You could, but that change had to come from central football, and I think that's what would have to happen in baseball. That you would have to, heighten the rules, make the penalties greater, and I do think that it's worth it if the player association leaders had a conversation among themselves. But I'm realistic, and I know that change probably wouldn't happen unless it came with a rule change. I mean, you guys saw last weekend this young pitcher for the Astros, Brett Oberholzer, got angry because he was having a bad game, and he threw at Alex Rodriguez. And after the game, his manager, A.J. Hinch, actually criticized him for that. And after that game, Oberholzer was sent to the minor leagues.
And he called up Joe Girardi and apologized, didn't he?
Yes, that's exactly right. And I think that you are getting a sense of that more and more, where players, the old school thought process was, if a pitcher's having a bad day, well, you got to shake things up, you got to knock somebody down, you got to hit somebody. Now, I think within the culture of baseball, that is increasingly becoming unacceptable.
All right. Now, there is one response I can envision hearing to that. I'm up against a break. Buster, can you hang on a minute?
Yes.
Okay, let's put Buster on hold. We'll bring him back for just one more question off the top of the hour, because I can already hear what the players are going to say. The players are going to say, much as they've been saying with fighting in hockey and other things that people have over the years suggested need to come out of the sport, is this is the way it polices itself.
Right, let us take care of situations on the field.
And if you take this out of the sport, while you think things will get better, they will actually get worse. Because this is how I make sure he doesn't do anything crazy, and he makes sure he doesn't do anything crazy, and we all keep ourselves in line. Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guests like Buster Olney on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline, and a special visitor in our studio in just a moment as well. Free agent frenzy, obviously the top story in sports this morning, and we've been talking about it all morning long. Kevin Love staying in Cleveland. That's very hard to turn down $110 million guaranteed if someone offers it to you. Other names signing yesterday. We're still waiting on DeAndre Jordan. Looks like he'll stay with the Clippers. Still waiting on LaMarcus Aldridge. Looks like he'll go to San Antonio. All that and a whole lot more as we continue this morning. But one more question for Buster Olney, good enough to hold with us through a break. Buster wrote a column not long ago, just to recap the discussion, in which he said that the practice, the age-old practice in baseball of the game policing itself by players throwing at each other, by pitchers throwing at hitters, has got to stop. You throw a 95, and actually, Buster, just in the time that we were in between there, you just tweeted, if throwing a 95-mile-an-hour fastball at another person on purpose is part of the game, why do players object to it? Buster, give me a little background on players objecting to it.
Oh, well, I mean, you're watching the game, and guys get thrown at inside. The hitters don't like it. And as I mentioned to you, there's no question there's been a shift in the culture where players are getting more and more angry when a pitcher, in their eyes, uses their own failings as an excuse and simply start throwing at guys because they're not pitching well.
Okay, so there's that part of it, and then there's the other part, which is the retaliation part of it, which was the column that you wrote not long ago that struck me. And I guess my response to that on behalf of what I can imagine players are going to say is, Buster, this is how we police ourselves. This is how the game polices itself, much like the fighting in hockey. And if you take this out of the game, things will actually get worse. Is that a response that you think you would hear or have heard from players in the sport?
Yes, and the typical response is essentially along the lines of, well, that's the way it's always been. And I understand that, but I'll go back to, for example, what we saw with blocking home plate rules, okay? They changed those, and I talked to so many players who said that's ridiculous. You're taking away a big part of the game. And since they put in the new rules, yes, occasionally you have an issue, and players are upset when a close play at the plate happens and the catcher doesn't block the plate. But you know how many catchers have been carried off the field since they did that? None. You know how many base runners have been carried off the field since they did that? None. And the idea that you have the strongest union in the world, where you can actually have an opportunity to improve safety for the players, and they pass up that opportunity, is ridiculous. And that's why, again, the idea of these guys throwing at each other on purpose, it seems so outdated. It seems inevitable that there's going to be a change.
All right, Buster Olney taking a stand, and it was a great column a couple of weeks ago, and we'll go in search of further perspective on that now. Buster, thanks a million for hanging on. We'll talk to you soon.
See you guys.
You know, it goes along the lines in my sport of football with the hit over the middle.
Yeah.
That intimidating hit over the middle, which the league will say, listen, you can still do it, just hit them properly. Though we've seen time and time again a flag thrown when it shouldn't be thrown because of a hard hit instead of an illegally hard hit. So they're trying to take that part of the game through rules out of the game. So you wonder, can they do that in baseball as well?
Well, let's find out. And for some perspective on this, we thought we'd bring in a pitcher who was a member of a bullpen that called themselves the Nasty Boys. It has been far too long since we said hello to former baseball all-star, former teammate of ours forever here, and now the host of the Rob Dibble Show on 97.9 ESPN here in Connecticut. Our buddy Rob Dibble is in our studio. Dibs, it is a pleasure to see you.
I love your new digs. They're awesome.
Like it?
It's beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, we just spruced it up for you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I love it.
We normally work out of a closet in another building.
We don't want you mad at us because you go high and tight.
All right. So you've heard the discussion.
Yeah.
You've heard sort of the framework of the discussion, and you knew that this was the reason, one of the reasons anyway, we wanted to talk to you today. So if someone says to you, as one who made your living and your life in this sport and still obviously bleeds it for anyone who knows you, we got to take this out of the game of baseball, what do you say?
That's ridiculous. First of all, no disrespect to Buster Olney. You guys are married. You have children.
Yeah.
You protect your family. If anybody came into your house, you protect your family. That's what this is all about. I mean, Buster Olney is simplifying the throwing at people. I faced almost 2,000 hitters in my career. I hit 12. Okay? You can pitch inside. You don't have to headhunt. You don't have to hurt anybody. And I understand about the cricket guy. He got a ball, it bounced, it hit him in the throat, he died. We've also got guys and coaches that have died from foul balls that have hit him in the neck. You'll never be able to stop that. You can't control that. But if someone, and I'll give you an example, my teammate Ron Oster had his knee blown out at a play at second base. When he came back from the ACL, MCL surgery, the Dodgers went after him and slid into him and slid not near his ankles, hit him in the hip. So when I came back at Mike Marshall on the Dodgers, it was not for something that somebody did that, was a part of the hitting and pitching aspect. It was a play at second base. So if somebody goes after my family, I'm coming after you. Now, we used to have fights in the clubhouse, and Mike knows this, but that's my family. You know, I lived, I breathed, I bled with these guys. And when I go back, and it's our 25th anniversary of the World Series, when I see them in 2 weeks, they're my brothers. I love them. I love Paul O'Neill. I love Eric Davis, Barry Larkin. So to say that I'm not going to protect those guys is insane. So for me, it wasn't retaliation. It was protection. There was a game, Eric Davis, he should be allowed to perform and do his job. He goes out there, and this was back in 1988 when Oral Hershiser had that scoreless streak. Mm-hmm. He hit Eric 3 times in one game. your command is as good as any Hall of Famer I've ever seen, and you hit my number 4 hitter 3 times in a game, what do you think we should do about that? Should we say, well, you know what, that's outdated. We shouldn't protect Eric? Bullcrap. I'm protecting Eric with my life and my arm if I have to, and if I have to make sure you don't hit Eric ever again, we've got the arms, and we'll line up guys that throw 95 all day against your guys so that Eric has a right to go out there and do his job.
You know, and there is a big part of me that agrees with that, of the protection aspect of your teammates in a physical situation. But is there a line somewhere? Do I have to see a guy get hit because he hit a home run off of a pitcher? Do I have to see a guy get hit because he may have flipped the bat? So I get what every...
See, but I never did that.
But,
so if you hit a home run off me, enjoy it.
Okay,
because you're not going to get another one.
Okay, but my point is, the examples you gave are physical examples.
Yes.
Going after. Someone hit a home run off of you. And he gets thrown at the next time, or the next person gets thrown at. Is that stuff that should not be around? Is that
absolutely
no?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, nothing should ever come above the shoulders. There's an art form to the art form. You hit a guy in the hip, you hit him in the ribs, you hit him under the armpit. You never go above the shoulders. That's insane. I would never tell anybody.
Would you even hit a guy after he hit a home? I guess
absolutely not. I never did. Like I said, I only hit 12 guys, and most of them I was either protecting my teammates, or I was told by a manager, listen, this guy did this, I saw it, and he tried to hurt one of our guys. We need you to go in there and physically do it. And I'll tell you, and when it happened, I didn't want to hit the first guy, so I let 2 guys hit before I got to a guy that I could hit. There's another time, there was a guy that kept bunting on us, kept stealing bases, was beating us, and our game plan, was we were going to hit him in the leg the first at bat of the first series. And we did that, and he couldn't run, and that was strategic. So, so
that part's okay.
Yeah, that part's okay, because we couldn't stand the guy, number one, and number two, it took him out of his game, and that's what we were trying to do.
Okay, so we're talking about a couple of different things here.
Yeah.
Let's stay with the retaliation part of it, okay? So Mike Marshall, was Mike Marshall the one who slid into Ron Oster?
Yes, he was.
He was. So where did you hit him?
Right in the back.
Right in the back.
Right in the numbers.
And he understood it.
Absolutely.
He understood why you did it.
Oh, absolutely.
Did he know it was coming before you did it?
No, absolutely not.
He did not know.
Okay, so again, we're never going to let you know when it's coming. So we'll let you think, oh, they're going to retaliate this next game. I mean, there was a time, remember when I hit DeCenzo running down the baseline?
Who could ever forget that?
People ever forget that, right?
Where does this include base runners?
It goes all the way back to Little League. That's a whole other story. When that happened, I had to hit in an extra inning game the next day. I thought, and Heathcliff Slocum throws 95 miles an hour, he's going to drill me. He walked me on 4 pitches. So I knew it was coming, and I'm a left-handed hitter. My arm's exposed, my pitching arm. I thought he's going to drill me for sure. So I was trying to make sure I could get my back turned to the pitch, and he never hit me. And no one ever hit me from the Cubs. And so for me, yes, retaliation I think is foolish, and but we're going to do it in a way where we may take you out at second base. We may run over your catcher. If Buster were playing against us, he would respect the fact that his guys protected him, and I respected and I protected my guys. They knew I had their backs. And 25 years later, guys, when they see me, they know I still have their backs. If we were in a fight in a bar today, Eric Davis knows I'm not walking out the back door. I'm running right in there. Paul O'Neill, Chris Sabo, every one of them. That's the way I am. I was raised by 2 deacons. I went to a Catholic school. I'm very spiritual. It's about right and wrong. And so I love when people say it's an unwritten rule. It's not an unwritten rule. It's the right thing to do. So when Eric got hit 3 times, no one had to say, hey, Dibs, go out there and protect Eric. Norm Charlton or Randy Meyer, go out there and protect Eric. We knew we got to protect our guy.
When you were at times told to hit someone, did you ever not want to do it?
Absolutely. The day. I mean, my whole family was down at Shea Stadium. I had the day off, and I was called in to hit somebody. The first guy was David Cohn, and I hadn't David. I love David. He's a pitcher. Plus his arm was exposed. He's a left-handed hitter, so he hits a double off the left field wall. I'm like, Jesus. Now I'm in the game, and he just hits one off the wall, and I don't even want to be in the game. Next guy's up, it's Juan Samuel. He hits an infield single. I'm like, I'm getting out of the game. And that's when Tim Tuffle came up and I hit him in the back. And you could go to YouTube and see the brawl. I didn't know Tuffle was from Greenwich. Had I known he was from Greenwich, I might have thrown it a little harder. But, for me, because I'm from Southington in Connecticut anyway, but at that point, it had gone beyond, hey, you're in here to do a job. Now it's like, man, now you're hurting my job. My ERA is going up, and I got to get out of here. And so, and listen, I took some beatings in those brawls. There's nothing fun about being at the bottom of a pile of a brawl. So, you do what you have to do, and so you can look your teammates in the eye the next day and go, you know what, you got my back. Because there's a lot of guys that will not do it. And Buster's right on with that. There's a lot of guys now. If I'm paying you $325 million, do you want to get hit? You don't want to get hurt. No. If you're John Carlos Stanton, you don't want to get hit in the face. That scares the heck out of me. So it's not about retaliation. It's more about protecting my family.
Mike and Mike, Rob Dibble is in our studio. I've got a great question here. 2,549 pitchers in Major League Baseball history have thrown at least 400 innings in their career, of which you are one. Do you know how many of them struck out more batters per 9 innings than Rob Dibble?
No.
The answer is 0. 0. No one struck out more batters per 9 innings in the history of the game than Rob Dibble did. So for those young people in our audience who don't know who Rob Dibble is, that's who Rob Dibble is. Okay, quick question. You said you hit 12 batters in your career. How many of those are on purpose?
10.
10 out of 12. So there were 2 that were actually.
I think one was a sidearm changeup that got away from me.
It does happen, and a changeup is going to hurt less anyway, right?
Yeah.
I mean, right. You're not hitting someone on purpose with a changeup.
No.
So it does happen occasionally. So let me ask the answer to what I would imagine. Maybe we should have kept Buster in the discussion, but what Buster might ask you in this case, and what I would ask you is there another way of the game policing itself? I get it. You're taking care of your family. They're taking care of their family as teammates, and that makes perfect sense. Is there another way to do it in modern baseball besides throwing a 95-mile-an-hour fastball into someone's ribs?
Absolutely. Absolutely. But like I said, you're going in hard. You're playing the game the right way. So if you go into hard second base on our guy, we're going to do the same thing. If you play the game the right way, usually it doesn't have to be policed. It's only when it gets out of hand and you do something so offensive or humiliating to our team. That's the whole stealing second and third when you're up 10 runs. That goes all the way back to Little League.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you do that? It's just you've already got us beat. The game's in hand. Why do you need to rub it in our face? That's when guys get upset, and that's when grown men become children again.
Should pitchers always be able to control when you threw it, guys?
No.
I mean, because we talk about the great command that these pitchers have. So, and all of a sudden you see them going up toward the head. I don't imagine you ever really want to do that. So should the command be there? If you want to hit a guy in the ribs, you can hit him in the ribs.
I never had that kind of command. I was always taught to throw downhill on a downward plane, downward. To try to throw up was against my nature. So it was the toughest thing to try to aim inside, to try to hit a guy in the ribs. That's why I didn't do it. Listen, I knew I threw 100 miles an hour. I knew I could kill somebody. I hit a guy in the elbow, it broke his elbow. So, at no time did I ever want to take away from your career, your family. That was in my mind every time I took the mound.
Would American League pitchers have more courage to do it because they know they're not getting hit the plate?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they don't have to get up there and get hit. So, yeah. But, again, after a certain time, Pedro Martinez didn't have to hit you. You already had the fear effect. That's why I don't like the protection. I hate guys with the elbow pads, wrist, hands, because that takes away the fear element that you could get hurt unintentionally. And you made a great point because so many guys can't control. I watched Eovaldi pitching for the Yankees last night. The kid throws in the upper 90s. Half the time it's moving all over. He's got a great moving fastball. He can't control that. So if he, hits one guy, up in the neck or something like that, God forbid somebody gets hurt, you might think that was intentional. I don't think it is. Because Randy Johnson couldn't control every fastball. I mean, you're hoping and you're visualizing, I'm going to put it right there, and then all of a sudden it leaves your hand and it's up at the guy's head. There's nothing you can do once it leaves your hand.
We're Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance. Rob Dibble is here. His Subway Fresh Take. Jeff Van Gundy, a little over an hour from now. His thoughts not only on the NBA free agency, but also on the 2 female soccer players living in his house.
Yes.
Which is fascinating as they get set to play for the Women's World Cup Championship. I could have this conversation forever, and it's one that will continue. But a few other things I want to get to while we have you here, Dibs. It is the 25th anniversary this year of your 1990 Cincinnati Reds winning the World Series. You brought us these very nice pins, and you guys will all be together at the
I brought you something else.
Well, let me see.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
You came bearing gifts.
I know. I see you guys have all these bobbleheads. This came out this year. It's the 25th anniversary. Nasty Boys bobblehead.
Oh, the Nasty Boys bobblehead. This is awesome. All right, that's going in a place of honor on the desk for sure.
Absolutely.
Watch out, though. It was made in China, and the heads could pop off. So
you played. You played for two legendary managers during your career. Lou Piniella, with whom obviously you didn't always see eye to eye.
No, not every day.
And then Pete Rose. Now, Mike and I both believed, and perhaps we always had this wrong, but we thought with this year, with Pete being there and everything being back in Cincinnati, that maybe this would be the time that they would bring Pete back into baseball. It appears clearly with the latest from outside the lines that isn't going to happen. But what are your thoughts all these years later on the possibility of Pete Rose getting reinstated and getting a chance to be a part of the sport again while he's still alive?
While he's still alive, I mean, he's in his 70s. It's how long can we tell this man that he's got these gambling demons? He knows he was a gambler. He knows he was, a compulsive gambler, and he was gambling on everything. And so, to say, well, he was gambling on baseball or he was gambling on he was gambling on everything. And so, and he's not the only one. I played for other managers, and they went to the horse track every day. They went to the dog track every day. There was guys that were betting in the clubhouses and stuff like that. He was just one that was caught. So after this amount of time, I would hope that we would, give him a second chance. That doesn't mean put him in the Hall of Fame. That's up to the writers. If they don't want to put him in the Hall of Fame and he's eligible, that's their
It may
deal.
not even be the writers that would go
exactly.
to. Right.
So, and the veterans, if it goes to them and they say no, the Hall of Fame needs Pete Rose. Pete doesn't need the Hall of Fame. Pete loves baseball. There's a generation of players that didn't learn about hitting and base running and stuff like that. It was funny when Buster Olney was saying, players don't want to get hit. They also don't want to take infield. They don't want to practice their craft. That's why defense is so shoddy in the major leagues, because they're lazy. So Pete was one of the not laziest people that ever played in the major leagues. He got the nickname because he hustled on a walk by a New York Yankees guy. Said, that guy, when he was a rookie, that's Charlie Hustle. And I think it was Whitey Ford that coined the phrase. So it's all about, this guy can give something back before he goes to the next, realm. Let him do it. We're just, and then every year before the Hall of Fame, you bring it up. And it takes away from the guys going in the Hall of Fame. So it doesn't make sense to me at this point to just keep him out of baseball because we think he was a compulsive gambler.
Is there part of it, though, that says you can't just let him – if you were close to letting him back in 2 months ago, he emphatically denies ever betting on baseball as a player, and then we have information that he does. If he would just come clean, like he did finally admit he gambled on baseball, but then still held out and said, I never did as a player, and then we find out it was as a player, that it would just help his case if he just came clean. Because doesn't it seem more difficult? Because Greeny and I both think he should be in the Hall of Fame. But then you do something like that where 2 months ago you never bet as a player. It just kind of kills the argument.
I do believe that, but that's a conversation you have with the commissioner and Rob Manfred. He's got to decide if putting Pete back in the game hurts the game. People like to use the word integrity.
Right.
Seriously. I mean, that's a joke by now. But Pete Rose being back in baseball is not going to hurt baseball. Baseball's bigger than Pete Rose. It's bigger than A-Rod. It's bigger than anybody. So, people love baseball. They love Pete Rose. So putting him back in the game allows him to just be around it. It doesn't mean that he's going to go back and teach kids how to gamble on it.
What will you say to him when you see him?
I love Pete. One spring training when my housing fell through, Pete gave me his house. I mean, Pete, if you know Pete, is to love him. He's one of the nicest humans I've ever met. So, Pete has his demons. That's his deal. It's funny because in the clubhouse, I play with guys. That doesn't mean I go home with them. That doesn't mean I act like them when I leave the ballpark. That just means this guy's on my team and, or he's my manager. It's like I didn't know them personally and what they were doing after the fact, just like they didn't know what I was doing. So for me, with Pete, God, he's got so much baseball knowledge, and just keep it at that, And then if you want to talk about the ills, and I know that, the NFLPA right now, you're going to have the rookie symposium. You're going to have the guys come in and say, hey, don't act like Adrian Peterson. Don't act like Ray Rice. Don't act like Greg Hardy. You're going to have all that kind of stuff right now to try to teach these guys. Pete Rose could teach a whole generation of guys, when you're off the field, don't go to the dog track. Don't hang out with these really, bad people that'll get you into some gambling and get you into some problems. That was the last thing he told us in 1989 was choose your friends wisely. And I still adhere to that to this day, that you can't trust everybody that's surrounding you. And that's why all those guys that he owed money to, that had all this stuff on Pete, those are the guys that have turned on Pete. And that's why he's in the position he is today.
Rob Dibble, again, you hear him throughout Connecticut on 97.9 ESPN, and you will see him all over the place in Cincinnati in a couple of weeks at the All-Star Game with the reunion of the 25th anniversary of the championship. And we'll be there as well. Looking forward to that. Wow, it's been so long. It's great to see you, Dibs. Thanks for coming by. It's great.
Thanks for having me, guys. Love seeing you.
Really great stuff.
We'll see each other in a different setting in Cincinnati.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I owe you a few.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Mike and Mike.
And now, for Geico's edition of Stuff Found in Your Car, we go inside your side door pocket.
Hello, yes, the crumpled receipt with gum in it. From your anniversary dinner, you sprang for expensive wine, your server was Beth. That dinner was a couple $100. Money you could get back if you switched to Geico and saved hundreds of dollars on your car insurance. I bet you'd save that receipt, frame it even. But really, where did I go wrong? Was it the corkage fee?
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance. Visit geico.com today.
Mike and Mike.
One of the best pitchers in baseball. For a long time since we've had a chance to say hello to David Price of the Tigers, who's with us on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline. David, welcome back. How are you this morning?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
It's always our pleasure. And let's just start as big picture as we can here, as we sit here rapidly approaching the All-Star break, and your team sitting just a little bit over 500, looking up at the Kansas City Royals, who've obviously had an amazing season. Where would you say you would assess your season and your chances to go going down the second half of the season this year?
I mean, we're a very confident group, first and foremost. I mean, we know we have the talent and we have the pieces in this locker room to do something special. So I mean, we just gotta play better baseball and just if everybody does their job, we'll be just fine. And that's what we got to get back to doing. That's what we're doing at the beginning of the year.
And everybody doing their job. Let's talk about you. How are you feeling and you're doing, and it's going for you individually at this point of the season?
I'm feeling good right now. I mean, body-wise, and in the way I threw the ball. Probably after my first, 4 or 5 starts, I felt like I picked it up pretty good. But I mean, just without the defensive plays I've been able to get throughout the course of the season, that really propels you whenever you're out there. So, I do feel good whenever I'm out there. We've played very well when I've been pitching. So that's really what I worry about is the Tigers winning, every 5th day whenever I'm out there.
So, and outside of your teammates, about your peers, what is it like when you're watching SportsCenter or something and you see the latest pitcher take 2 outs into the 9th and give up a hit to lose that perfect game or that no-hitter? From a pitching standpoint, do pitchers feel for other pitchers?
Absolutely. I mean, I wasn't heartbroken for Carrasco last night, but I mean, I wanted to see him get it. But I mean, even though it was against Tampa and all my buddies there, I still root for pitchers to throw cool games like that. I mean, even if it's against my team, I still tip my cap to that guy, and I respect that. So it does stink, but I got to watch Max's on TV live, but I didn't get to see the one last night. But I was kind of hoping he did it, but if he didn't, it was cool because it was against Tampa as well.
Mike, David Price is with us. A couple of different things I want to get into with you. One of them is that you will be a free agent after this season, and you saw Max Scherzer, who was with you, get over $200 million. And that's the kind of thing that I would imagine you want to try and put out of your head as much as you can. But look, the specter of hundreds of millions of dollars sitting there for someone can't be ignored. When people talk about how a contract year, a player's mentality, take us through that. What is the mentality, and how is it different in a contract year that it would be in any other year of your career?
I mean, honestly, you can't look at it any different. If you do, that's when you're going to get caught up in performance and just worrying about what you're going to make in the years coming, and you're not going to worry about what you're trying to do right now. That's what I want my teammates to know, day in and day out. I'm here to be a Tiger, and I'm here to win right now. And if I can show these guys that, not just the day that I pitch, but the days in between, in the dugout and in the clubhouse, it's just going to gain respect from those guys, and ultimately that's what I want.
And one of the other topics that we've been talking about, David, is the All-Star voting and the fact, and listen, it's not the Kansas City Royals players' fault at all if they're being voted in the way they are. It's the voting system that's out there. But as I've always said, because there is now so much riding on the game, home field in the World Series, does it, amongst players around the league, is it looked at as, boy, this shouldn't be happening like this?
I mean, I think it's kind of happened like this for a while. It's just, right now, it's just a little bit bigger because of the numbers of the voting, I think. But I mean, you just want to see the most rewarding guys, you know, get rewarded for what they've done in the first half, and that's the whole thing. You know, like I made the comments earlier, and I definitely commended the Royals fan base for rallying behind their team the way that they had and voting for those guys, and that's what Major League Baseball wanted, and that's what they got. But you want to see the guys that are most deserving, you know, to be an All-Star, you know, get that chance to be an All-Star. You don't want somebody to be snubbed solely because of, you know, of fan voting, and that stinks.
Yeah, some of the more recent voting, it seems to be sort of stabilizing itself at least a little bit, right, and we'll see a couple of weeks now, and we'll all be in Cincinnati together, Mike and David Price. We had a really interesting conversation here this morning, David, and you're the perfect person to ask because you're a current pitcher in Major League Baseball. Buster Olney, who I'm sure you know, our baseball insider, wrote a piece after a cricket player was killed in a really, I guess, a fluky thing where he wound up getting hit with a ball that hit him in the throat. And he wrote a piece about how the time for taking the way the game is policed and guys hitting each other and stuff like that as retaliation for things, that there needs to be serious consideration to that sort of being something in the past, that the day and age of throwing at guys, which has been a part of baseball for 150 years, needs to come and go. Now, we had Rob Dibble in our studio earlier this morning from a generation before yours, and he said that's steadfastly ridiculous. It's a critical part of the game. It should not go away and will not go away. As a current pitcher yourself, what are your thoughts on that? The unwritten rules, the way the game is policed by you guys on the mound, and whether that's something that needs to be considered?
I mean, I'm sure it can be considered, but I mean, you always have to protect your teammates, and to me, honestly, that's the reason why it happens out there, you know, during the game. If something happens in the game and you have to protect your teammates to let your teammates know that you've got their backs, and that's what's got to happen. But there's definitely a right way to go about it. You know? And if you ask me, I mean, above the belt and stuff, that's you're getting too high. And I mean, you can't throwing it at heads and stuff like that. You know, that's putting people's lives in danger, and that's definitely what you want to stay away from. But you know, there's a right way to do everything, and if you can do it the right way, then it's just fine.
You know, and that's exactly what Dibble said, and we talked about, or he talked about, how players aren't going to change that. Do you think there is a way, you know, I talked about in my sport how they've kind of taken that over-the-middle hit away, even though they say if you hit correctly it's legal, but they're kind of taking it away and taking away that aspect because of injuries with rules and enforcing rules. Do you think if baseball made stiffer penalties, bigger fines for things like that would deter it, or the baseball players would just say, hey, here's a blank check, I'm still going to defend my teammate?
I think if you're defending your teammate, I think the front office or somebody, your manager, somebody on this team is going to pick that up. You know, I mean, if one of the young guys did that and they got fined for, you know, getting one of our teammates' backs, and I'm definitely going to pay that fine for that guy. So, I mean, I don't think you have to worry about the fines. They will, if it happens, they will get paid, and hopefully it's you know, by somebody, you know, in the front office by the team, because if you're doing it to protect your teammates, you know, I completely get that. But like I said before, there's definitely a right way to do it.
David, we always appreciate the time, continued success, and we'll check in with you again down the road. Thanks very much.
Thanks, David.
Well, thanks, man.
This has been the best of Mike and Mike on ESPN Radio Pod Center. To hear more from Mike and Mike, log on to ESPNradio.com and become an ESPN Radio Insider.
The best of Mike and Mike.